Independent journalist Dan Dix, who runs the social media Press for Truth, was recently at a rally where he got hounded and harassed by a bunch of people screaming that he was a Nazi. Long story short, the police told him he had to leave, and he said, "For what? I didn't do anything." And we've seen these things happen, but now we're getting to a very, very dangerous... I mean, look, man, I hate to say it because I say the precipice all the time, but we're well beyond this, man. It's going to get bad. It's going to get real bad. They arrested Dan Dix. Now, I got to be honest. I know Dan. Don't know a lot about him, so I don't really know how to describe him. I was like, I asked him about what happened. Apparently, he got charged. This is in Canada, by the way, in Vancouver. He got charged with disturbing the peace. I believe they just dropped the charges and released him several hours later. So I don't know to call him libertarian, conservative. I just call him independent. I don't know what his political alignment is. Now, he's been criticized. They're criticizing him now. Totally irrelevant. Totally irrelevant. I don't think it's relevant to the story. This is from the Georgia Straight. They say, critic of COVID-19 distancing and George Floyd Memorial, Dan Dix, out of jail after being arrested in Vancouver. I'm not entirely sure why they needed to frame the story that way, but they say, Dan Dix calls himself an investigative journalist and a documentary maker, but his antics haven't always impressed the big tech companies. One of his vaccination videos was pulled from YouTube, and in 2018, his Facebook page was unpublished for misleading behavior. In April, Dix was once again raised eyebrows by praising a small group of demonstrators who gathered outside Vancouver City Hall to protest COVID-19 induced lockdown orders. I don't see what's wrong with that. People have a right to protest. You don't have to agree with it. And he's upset some civil rights activists by condemning a memorial for George Floyd, the 46-year-old African-American who died last month in Minneapolis. Dix thinks that if people can show up for events honoring Floyd, others should be allowed to attend funerals for their loved ones. How is this controversial? How are they smearing Dan for this? This is ridiculous. Dude, you know what, man? These people have lost the plot. This is the point. Here's what this guy, Luke LeBrun, said. First, he lost his $800 GoPro camera. Then the police told him he's under arrest. Then the media smeared him. Some of those attending the demonstration didn't appreciate him being there. But before the evening ended, Dix was out of jail and promising to provide revelations of what really happened. So what? A guy shows up. He walks around filming. Some people start yelling and screaming, and the cops arrest him. Then the media writes what's essentially a smear. And the best they can come up with is, if protesters can protest, people can go to funerals. I mean, yeah, the logic is sound, right? Now, listen. I don't follow, with no disrespect, I don't follow Dan's work. I'm not super familiar. I've covered stuff alongside him in some instances. Like, there have been several events where he's been there as well, is the way I can put it. So I'm saying this because I don't want to speak on his behalf. I don't want to tell you what he believes. Not here to tell you what his ideology is. I'm just here to defend the right for people to film, express their ideas. And in this regard, because of the mob, the police arrested him. Let me tell you how this turns out. This is scary times. You've heard me mention this story over and over and over again because of how serious it is. Breitbart reports. Journalist Cassandra Fairbanks reports people fired guns at her house after Twitter death threats. They also fired fireworks. She tweeted that they found casings, I guess. Maybe it was a couple shots. I don't know. She was armed, hiding with her daughter, and then she's since fled. There's a big GoFundMe to raise money for her to get her out safely. That day, I was talking to a friend. They had doxed Cassandra, posted her address, and I said, it's only a matter of time before someone shows up. I did not think it would be that day. I know you've heard me talk about this, so let's bring it back to Dan Dix. And I want to explain to you what's going on. I have seen this happen. It's happened to me. I was at an event where Mike Cernovich was speaking. I was just outside filming the protests, minding my own business. Some people then started screaming my name, but nobody knew who I was. Then these people started going to the police and lying and making things up. I backed away from the crowd, stood next to security, and I showed one of the security people my press badge from a major news outlet saying these people are nuts. I have no idea what they're talking about. They were outright lying and just fabricating stories. It was insane. Like making things up about me. This one time he went out to this event and he did this, he did that. And I'm like, I've never gone to your events. I don't know who you are. I just came down here to film this one event. So that's what happened. They went nuts. Now, nothing happened to me. They told me not to worry about it and they wouldn't do anything anyway. That's how things were a couple of years ago. That was like 3 years ago. Now, what's going on? Now, when the mob comes, the police say it is easier to violate the rights of one person than it is to fight a mob. Take that to its logical conclusion with what happens with Cassandra. And here's what I fear. There will come a time when they won't just be banging on her windows and shooting guns at her house. They'll kick the door in. Someone will see the door get kicked in, and then people are going to slowly inch their way through mob mentality into the house, trashing things. So listen. It's not like a group of angry people will show up planning with tactical force to kick the door in, to run through, drag someone to the street, and execute them. That's not how it happens. It's much scarier than that. The mob that was attacking Dan Dix didn't know who he was. They were calling him a Nazi. He's not a Nazi. They were screaming at him. They have no idea who he was, and the cops arrested him. They arrested him. Think about what comes next. Protesters show up to a house banging on the windows. The cops get called. And the cops say it is easier to arrest the person in the house than it is to deal with the mob. Not only that, it'll keep the person in the house safe. It's probably what they were thinking when they arrested Dan. Oh, this angry mob won't stop. If we arrest him, they'll go away, and then he'll be safe, right? Think about what's going to happen here. Here's what I think we'll see. Protesters have shown up to Tucker Carlson's house. They were banging on the door. Not a whole lot happened. Okay, that was crazy. Don't break into people's houses. We've now escalated about a year after that. Now they're shooting at Cass's house. They're going to show up to someone's house. One person will bang on the door, and then someone will kick the door and the door will open. They'll all be a little confused, but one person will peek in the door. Someone will see that person peek inside and think they're going in, and then go in and take a step inside. All of these incremental actions are how mob mentality takes over. And before you know it, no one had the intention of showing up and ransacking your house, but now people are like, oh man, everyone's in here. I'm going to run in and grab something. It's exactly what we see with standard rioting. What's scary about this is that it's going to come to your homes. Okay, let me show you this. I guess America is finally listening. Why George Floyd protests have spread to affluent white suburbs. At first, they targeted buildings. They were going after retail stores. Now they're in the suburbs. They've already attacked people's houses. What happens when a mob shows up and the cops are there and they scream, arrest this person for something they made up? They made stuff up about me. They made it up about Dan. Dan got arrested. How long until the cops actually arrest them? How long until law enforcement hands over these people to Antifa? Actually, it already happened. The guy in Minneapolis, and I'm not saying he's a good guy at all, definitely should be charged with murder. Third degree made sense. They upped it to second degree. They gave Keith Ellison, a guy who took a picture with the Antifa handbook, whose kid basically says that he's Antifa. He's going to be handling the prosecution. That seems to me like the beginning stages of appeasing the mob. So what happens? You will be a pariah in your community because you'll believe something. The mob will spread lies about you. They'll bang on your door. The cops will show up, and then they'll arrest you, and you'll be prosecuted by Antifa. Now, when some of that happens, I don't know. But let me tell you what. There are some very small suburbs of Chicago. Apparently now they are seeing protests erupt, but the people aren't even from there. And so everyone's confused. Outside agitators are going to small suburbs and protesting, and the residents aren't. What happens when a group of these lunatics shows up in your neighborhood claiming to be protesters who have the right to be there, and the police just cave? I'm not sure how long it'll take for something like that to happen, but it's happened in the past. Look at Robespierre in France. Off with their head, literally everybody. Don't care who they are. Gotta appease the mob, and everyone just went with it. I don't know how far away something like that could be, and maybe we won't be there. But let me tell you right now, they already showed up to Cass's house and shot it up. Dan was arrested in Vancouver. This cult ideology is getting insane. And what happens when the police department gets infiltrated? Now, that's the difficult thing. So guess what? The other day I talked about the New York Times and this grand battle where they're going to be, taking over the New York Times, right? James Lindsay talked about how they infect an organization and then raise, hell until they take it over or kill it. They can't take over the police. Who wants to be a cop? Who can be a cop? The cop is entrenched. So what do? They're destroying it. They're destroying the police department. When that happens, there will be no one to stop the mob coming to your house. Minneapolis right now is talking about disbanding the police department. Here's my fear. With everything we've seen, what happens when the mob shows up to your house and there's no cops? They've disbanded the police. And then the mob says, off with their head. You might think it's far away. Maybe it is. I think it's dangerously close. I really, really do. Stories like this kind of freak me out. Let me show you one more thing. Mark Hemingway tweeted, the New York Times ran an op-ed that said, texts to your relatives and loved ones telling them you will not be visiting them or answering phone calls until they take significant action in supporting Black lives, either through protest or financial contributions. The cult is taking over, and it's only a matter of time before they show up to your house like they did Cassandra. Maybe it'll be in a year, 2, 3, 4, 5, I don't know. But I was shocked to find out that it was that day they doxed Cassandra, they showed up to her house. I'm not going to sit around and wait for them to disband the police department and then cross my fingers and hope the mob doesn't come for me, or that I'd survive if an angry mob started firebombing my house. I'm not going to wait for it. Sorry. I don't know what's going to happen or what to expect, but I'll leave it there. Stick around. One more segment coming up in a few minutes, and I'll see you all shortly.